Hey everybody, it's Elaine, and today I'm back with Jeremy. Today we're going to be talking about our least favorite books. So, when you think about books, I think most people would realize that everyone picks them up for a different reason. For some people, it's to find an escape from reality. For others, it's sort of a study in how other people express themselves. When you pick up a book, what do you look for, Jer? What sort of thing contribute to your enjoyment of a book?
Um, Compelling characters. I feel like compelling characters and like well fleshed out characters are kind of the thing that's the most important to me, because if you have good characters, then the plot can kind of take a back seat. Like anything that happens can kind of work as long as you're there through the interaction with the characters. Um, Good, just like well done descriptions, like language that's not too um, pompous. Like, I don't need you to use a bunch of big fancy sounding words just for the sake of using big fancy sounding words, but I don't want you using like really dumbed down language either, because that kind of bothers me.
That makes sense.
Um, and world building. I also include like a fleshed out magic system. Like if I'm leading a fantasy book, I like a really fleshed out magic system that's like consistent and kind of has rules. I like hard magic systems, not soft magic systems.
So,
And
like
good
Sanderson.
Yeah, more Sanderson, less Lord of the Rings. Even though I haven't read the Lord of the Rings book, and I have no problems with them, but
There are three books.
books.
Yeah.
But I have no problems with it. But it's a very soft magic system. It's kind of like just a wizard did it. But in like the Sanderson books, it's like they all have defined rules. They have charts. They have things like that that kind of make the magic system work. And I feel like really good fantasy books, especially, have that kind of a leaning.
I agree. I tend to gravitate towards fantasy books myself. I like the idea that this isn't taking place where I live. I find that more exciting. I feel drawn into them more typically. I also need some entertaining characters. I find that in a lot of literature, especially like young adult literature, you get the same person over and over thrown into a different situation. And it's kind of boring. I want someone who isn't one dimensional. I want someone who isn't static. I want them to grow throughout the course of the novel, especially if the novel or if it's a series takes place over a number of years. I don't expect them to be the same person they were at the beginning as they are at the end, which is something you see a surprising amount of the time. And it's kind of ridiculous when you think about it. It's like 10 years have passed, but you're the same. What?
Yeah.
So that's an issue. Would it be fair to say, do you think that if books don't meet these criteria of, having a fleshed out world, magic system, if it's, relevant, characters, things like that, you don't like the book?
For the most part, there's certain books that kind of break the rules that might go against my typical preferences, but they tend to excel in like some way that I didn't do. Like there was just a really cool concept, or like some kind of really well done language that like I liked, or the prose was really good. Like there's something in it might have excelled, and that might have pushed me past my objections. But for the most part, like if it doesn't meet those kind of criteria, well fleshed out characters, good world building, decent magic system, that stuff's not going to get past my screening.
I would agree with that. I also think that, at least for me, as someone who, majored in English, like the way words sound and the way they're put together and grammar is really important to me. If the book does not have a properly structured sentence on a regular basis, which is a surprisingly common occurrence, then I'm putting it down. It's a little much for me. I like proper sentence structure, and I like things to be spelled correctly, because sometimes it gets very confusing if there are tons of typos and grammar rules are broken on a regular basis and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, now that we have agreed on the things we like and don't like in books, I want to take some time to discuss our least favorite books, and then we're going to rank them. We're going to find the worst book ever, because why not? Do you want to start? Do you want me to start?
You can start.
All right. So the first book that I'm bringing to the table as the potential worst book ever is Heretics Anonymous. It is Katie Henry's first novel, and it's told from the perspective of Michael Osman, who is a junior in high school. He is also an atheist, and he switches to a Catholic school called St. Clair's, and he's a little worried about that. He feels like he's not going to fit in with the other students because he's an atheist and they're presumably Catholic. He's worried that his classes on religion are going to be absolute torture, and he's convinced that he's going to spend all of his time surrounded by wait, what's the exact quote? Hold on. Mindless Catholic sheep people. I'm sorry. He is actually surprised when he gets to the school to find that not everyone there is Catholic, and there are people who are Catholic that don't agree with, Catholicism's doctrines. He also discovers that there is a group of students who created a club called Heretics Anonymous. Basically, the kids who are Catholic don't agree with the church doctrine or aren't Catholic and have things they want to talk about. It's a secret group at the onset of the novel. They typically start by basically complaining about how much school sucks. But as the novel progresses, they decide to become a little more public. They spend some time talking about the hypocrisy of church doctrine and making it apparent to the other students in the school, and also just basically saying these rules are ridiculous, like the dress code. Eventually, Michael oversteps a few boundaries, and he has to decide whether or not to out the rest of the people in the group. So there were several reasons why I absolutely could not stand this novel. First of all, it was just really slow, which is weird. It's a YA novel. One of the tenets, if you will, of YA novels is that they're fast-paced. There's always something going on. This was not the case. It was really boring. It took forever for things to happen, and even when things were, quote, happening, it felt like nothing was going on. I basically had to drag myself through this book. It was something I read for school. It was horrible. And also felt like there wasn't a point. I didn't really understand what Henry was trying to accomplish with this book. There was a plot, but it seemed like there really wasn't a plot, which is kind of problematic because that's really important for books.
Yeah.
The second thing that really bothered me, which might not have bothered me if this hadn't been the case, was the cover says that it's, quote, a divine comedy, and this book isn't funny. I didn't laugh at all. It really bothered me. Like, if it didn't set up the expectation that this would be funny, this wouldn't be an issue, but that was my expectation because it's on the cover, and it didn't deliver, so that was troublesome. Third thing is that the minor characters lacked personality because Henry didn't bother to flesh any of them out. For example, Eden was just a girl who happened to be a pagan, and Max was just a socially awkward Asian kid who was, for whatever reason, obsessed with capes. Or cloaks. Sorry, cloaks, not capes. There is a slight difference. Anyway, they both lacked a point and a purpose. I didn't get why they were there. So, next problem was Michael, who is the main character. And I say this because he's really disrespectful, he's rude, he's whiny, he's impossible to like, and he's convinced the world revolves around him. He's just awful. And basically, he's creepy. I legitimately cringed while reading this freaking novel, which is not something I do while reading. Typically. Why do I say this? Because Michael is obsessed with Lucy. He talks about her all the time. He thinks about her constantly in a way that's just not appealing, especially for a female reader. For example, while at a slumber party, he describes how Lucy is 100% not wearing a bra. That's in capital letters, which makes it creepier. He also talks about how much he wants to take off Lucy's clothes and see her naked regularly. Again, not so comforting. And he also has a conversation with his leftover dream boner during the slumber party, which I wish I was kidding about. It's really off-putting. I don't know if guys do that. I'm pretty sure guys do that. I'd like to think guys don't do that. And I find this
out loud conversation.
Like, I think it was in his head, but still, it was just like, even that is just weird. And I find it even more disturbing just because I'm pretty sure this novel is geared towards young female readers. And I think it's fair to say that most women know that, wanting to undress girls or members of whatever sex you're attracted to is a thing that guys think about. But we don't want to think about you thinking about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We know, but we don't want to know. So just an odd choice to go into these kinds of details for a book for girls. And then finally, I felt as though Henry should have punished the members of Heretics Heretics Anonymous more for drinking in order to deter her readers, which are, again, young adults, from engaging in risky behavior. In many ways, I felt like she was kind of glamorizing underage drinking because the heretics don't really face any repercussions for their underage drinking, which is strange because when you think about underage drinkers, especially people in high school, they don't really know their limits yet. Maybe a few of them listen to what happens in, health class and they kind of got it and they're good. But I'd like to think that most people, generally speaking, don't get it, and they're gonna overdrink and they're going to get sick. They might get alcohol poisoning. They might have to have their stomachs pumped. They're gonna puke. They're gonna be stupid. It's just a thing that we all have to deal with because it's a rite of passage or whatever. But that didn't happen. One of the characters just acted like an idiot the next day because he had a hangover or whatever. And it just, A, didn't seem realistic, and B, I felt just glamorized something that's not glamorous, especially for this age bracket.
I mean, do you think that for all books that are in that age bracket or going towards that specific audience have to have like a kind of like moral judgment on the behaviors, or can?
I don't think they have to have a moral judgment. I just think they need to be realistic, and I didn't feel like this was realistic. Especially because I think they were like 16-ish, I guess. You'd be 16 when you're a junior. Yeah, you don't know what you're doing, so repercussions.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think it needs to be like a full, your parents find out, because sometimes your parents don't find out and you're still drinking and you don't get punished, and that's one thing. But I think it needs to be a little more apparent that there are effects to taking alcohol, especially in large amounts. You're probably going to puke, which none of them did. You're probably going to act like an idiot, which only one of them did. Something needs to happen to make it seem realistic. I also, I hate to say it, but everybody loves a good train wreck, and to have some sort of alcohol poisoning or something would have made this novel a lot more entertaining, which sounds terrible, I'm aware, but let's be honest. We like a train wreck.
Need conflict.
So there's that. Did you want to state one of yours now?
Yeah. Let's go. Okay. I'm going to start off with Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, which is technically not a book. It's a script based off of a play.
But it's in book form.
It's in book form. And
so
they very much pushed it as like the eighth book, the eighth story in the Harry Potter series. And it's very much not the eighth story in the Harry Potter series. The name is really strange too, like Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, because it's kind of unclear who the Cursed Child is. There will be spoilers for this, so if we have not, it's fairly recent, I guess, last year or the year before?
I think it's 2 years now.
2 years, yeah. But I will talk about the whole thing. So
be warned.
The Cursed Child is initially you would think that it's supposed to be Albus, who is Harry Potter's son. That's in the epilogue of the first series, or of the series. But then it's kind of that it turns out to be Delphi, who's Voldemort's daughter, is, I guess, the Cursed Child. They don't really say who the Cursed Child is.
When did he have time to have a kid, though?
It happened apparently before the Battle of Hogwarts with Bellatrix, which I think is see, that's one of my major things. I can't see it because how Voldemort is not he doesn't come off as somebody who is he would have a sexual relationship with any of his followers, or in general he's kind of like a bag of evil. That's kind of how he's presented as. I don't really get the sense of really that happening, but also the fact that he's been dead and then came back and then was his body was created blood of a teenage boy and all that crap.
What?
Would he even be able, the whole ritual with Harry's blood.
What?
But would he even be able to have kids? It seems kind of strange that he even be able to have. He's like a snake person now, but either way. So the whole foundation behind it is it takes place when Albus is just entering into Hogwarts, and he's kind of already feeling the pressure before he even gets there. I mean, in the epilogue, they talk about how he doesn't want to be sorted into Slytherin. That's his thing. And Harry's like, I don't care. You're partially named after a Slytherin. Because Severus it's Albus Severus Potter.
You mean Albus is talking when he's getting sorted by the hat? You said Harry.
Huh? No, in the epilogue, Albus is Albus is worried when he talks when he's at the train station, and he's worried about being sorted into Slytherin. And Harry says to him, "Oh, I don't care. Like you're partially named after this," something like that. But so he's worried about being sorted into Slytherin, and he goes to Hogwarts, and guess what? He's sorted into Slytherin.
Surprise!
So he's like the only Potter, and everybody's all like shock and awe. And he befriends Scorpius Malfoy, who is Malfoy's
that is
son.
A terrible name.
Yeah, it's not a good name. But so they become like best friends, and it really doesn't focus on the school at all. You get like one scene per year, like very uneventful. And it goes through like little by little, and then but he's kind of feeling the pressure of like being the son of the great legendary Harry Potter, and he kind of has this very rose tinted view of how Harry's experience in school was, like that he was always the boy who lived, and that was always like this amazing thing, when really in reality it was more of a blight on Harry. Like he was known by everybody, he didn't even know why he was known by everybody for a while, and it kind of made him more of a pariah than it made him like the cool person. But he just like looks at the legend that was his father and kind of measures himself against it. He's terrible at Quidditch, Albus. He can't get his broom to come. Like the same teacher that's in
Madam Hooch.
Madam Hooch. Yeah, she's the same teacher is still teaching the broom class, and his sister and Scorpius are able to get the broom to come up, and he can't get the broom to come up. So he's like no all-star Quidditch player here. And so he's just like kind of bad at everything. And meanwhile, Harry's working in the ministry, and Hermione is a really inept minister of magic at this point, who can't control any of her people that work for her.
Sounds about right.
And they introduce one of the dumbest things that you could possibly introduce into a series, which they already introduced, but they handled it well. Time travel, because they found like prototype time turners that allow you to go back further in time. And you can only go back for 5 minutes at a time, but you can go back years in the past, and you can actually change the past.
What can you do in 5 minutes?
I don't know. They do a lot of things in 5 minutes.
Okay.
But you can actually change the past, which is something that in the rules of Harry Potter you can't do. Like in Prisoner of Azkaban, I know you did that time turner episode already, but in Prisoner of Azkaban, they kind of talk about time travel as you go back, and you're just kind of refilling a loop, like it already happened. So that's kind of was her way of having time travel, but not having time travel. And she even Rowling even said she regretted introducing time travel into the series, which is why she destroyed all of them in the 5th book. Like all of the time turners got destroyed.
I hated that one. Fun fact.
Actually, that was my favorite book.
Really, the 5th one?
Yeah,
that was like my least favorite. I thought the only fun pages were like the last 40-ish.
That's because it was ending.
No, because they were at the ministry and stuff was happening.
Yeah, well, that's when they got destroyed. I
don't remember.
So
I was a child.
All the time turners got destroyed. But so this breaks its like own pre-established time travel rules. And when they find this thing, Amos was Diggory, Cedric Diggory's father, goes to Harry and Hermione and says like, "Oh, go back and save my son." And they're like, "No, we can't interfere with the past. We want to like get rid of this time turner thing." And then Amos is all pissed off, and Hermione decides to keep the time turner instead of destroying it. And long story short, skipping over a bunch of stuff, like Albus and Scorpius kind of decide that they're gonna like make a name for themselves. Albus mostly make a name for himself and travel back in time and save Cedric, because that's the one thing his legend father was never able to do. And then we end up with like one of the biggest tropes in science fiction and fantasy that you'll ever see, where they go back, they save Cedric by making him fail in the first, like they disarm him in the first task of the Triwizard Tournament. And they go back, and then like there's certain people aren't born, and then like the world still isn't fixed. Like it's basically the same, but like Harry's sister or Albus's sister doesn't exist, and like there's other little differences. They go back again to try and fix it, and then it creates this like they make him fail, like humiliate him in the second event, and his head inflates and he like can't swim underwater, so it kind of prevents him from doing anything, and he's like laughed at and he's humiliated, so he becomes a Death Eater apparently, because that's what happens when you're laughed at and humiliated in school. You become like a murderous, sadistic person, and that leads to the rise of Voldemort, and he like is now Dark Lord of the world because just because Cedric was humiliated in front of everybody, which I think is him becoming a Death Eater is very out of character in general, but that's okay.
No, it seems super logical. Very logical.
There's it turns out that Delphi, who is the daughter of Voldemort, was pretending to be Amos's niece, and like she goes back with them to help them do all this stuff. And at this point, like if you don't know that she's the bad person, like then like I don't know what you're reading, but it was very obvious that she was going to turn out to be the bad person. And she like strands them back there, and everybody like they have a whole bunch of fan service, but in general, the book just kind of, as somebody who likes the Harry Potter series, it kind of ruined a lot of things about it, especially the fact that J.K. Rowling says it's canon, like, and I don't see how it can really be canon because there's like, if you accept it as canon, it kind of, because they go back, they fix a lot of the stuff. Obviously, nothing holds weight in the story because everybody who dies, everybody who has anything happen to them, you know, is just going to be fixed through time travel. And the vast majority of things get fixed, but little things here and there never get undone that they went back and did. Like they have a conversation with Hermione when they're right in the second trip before they swell Cedric's head. That conversation never gets undone. So that conversation takes place in the canon of the Harry Potter stories, which basically like ends up leading to things being different. So basically all of the books after Goblet of Fire aren't canon if you believe that this is canon. A Gryffindor student is killed by Delphi, which is never undone. Random Gryffindor student. So
gotta have that.
Like it's kind of just weird things. It's like it's unnecessary. The continuity for it is kind of strange because it seems like it plays off both the movie continuity and the book continuity separately, because they reference the hedges trying to eat them during the maze at the end of the fourth exam part, but that only happens in the movie. It doesn't happen in the book. They have like the blast-ended scroots and all that stuff and like stuff in it, but the hedges don't try to eat them. That's in the movie. But then when Delphi's fighting them and she's flying, they act like, oh my god, you can fly, that must mean you're Voldemort's daughter, because that was in the books, it was Voldemort's thing that he could fly, but in the movies everybody can fly. Like all the Death Eaters are zipping around all over the place. So you're playing off two different continuities, which is kind of strange. It just kind of is a mess in general. It's lazy writing. Whenever you see in like a TV show when they do that alternate universe kind of episode, it's always like, we ran out of stuff to do, so we're just going to do this. It's the same characters. We don't have to pay any more actors. They're just going to be all different. Thoughts?
Well, that's a lot of thoughts. So it's just a messy book.
It's a very messy book.
Play in book form.
Yeah, play in book form. It's not an ideal form to view this kind of thing. Like it would have been better if it was either a book or just a play with not a mass-produced script, because it's very poorly done as a script. But they pushed it. Like they pushed this script. It was out in Barnes and Nobles. Like it was a big thing. And it's like you're kind of having people like witness this story in the worst possible way.
It's true. All right. Here's a big one, guys. I think it's time. We got to talk about Twilight. Now, I've only read the first one, so I'm going to keep my assessment to the first book. But feel free to complain about the other ones if you please. So, all you need to know is that in the first book, 17-year-old Bella Swan moves from Phoenix, Arizona to Forks, Washington, and finds her life in danger after she falls in love with a vampire named Edward Cullen. Sums it up. All right. So, several issues with this book. The first, the whole concept that the Cullens are vegetarians because they feed on animal blood and not human blood just doesn't make sense. That's still blood. You're not a vegetarian. I hate to break it to you. That's just not how vegetarianism works. You gotta eat some plants. some carbs.
Okay.
Carbs are nice.
That's what vampire vegetarians are, because animals are vegetables to vampires.
Doesn't make sense. Moving on. Okay. Unlike a lot of other books who, again, might gloss over this and not spend too much time on it, this book doesn't mention anything having to do with the vampire biology or physiology. So, like, why do the vampires sparkle? Why aren't they bursting into flame like they're supposed to? I want to know. I like when things burst into flame, in books, because violence. Anyway, also kind of wondering how they sustain themselves on animal blood, because usually when you look at other books with vampire lore, animal blood is like lesser and they can't really survive on it or do as well with it.
If you look at like Interview with a Vampire and stuff, like he was surviving off of rats for a while and he was like really weak and
exactly
like frail.
Yeah. So wondering how that worked out, because they seem fine, those Cullens. Edward's a creepy stalker person. Like, he just winds up in Bella's room and watches her sleep. Now, if I was a girl and some guy snuck into my room at night and watched me sleep and I found out about it, I'd be getting a frying pan and hitting him over the head and calling the police, because that's creepy.
But she thinks it's romantic.
It's not romantic. It's creepy. I have news for you, Bella. That's creepy and abnormal. You should look into that. Maybe get some therapy. The other thing that's kind of creepy about it is, okay, Edward looks like he's, her age, 17-ish. But he's not. I want to say he's in his 90s or 100, somewhere around there. And he's into her and she's into that. And it's like, he's old enough to be your great grandpa, basically. Yeah.
I mean, that's a common thing in vampires in general, I feel.
Yeah, but it's still kind of weird. Yeah. I don't want to date someone that much older than me. Ew. Yeah. And another thing that's really concerning with this novel is the lack of female agency. Like, there's a scene where Edward takes Bella's car keys and he says, "You're intoxicated by my very presence." And then she says, "There was no way around it. I couldn't resist him in anything." It's like, really? Really? You couldn't resist him? He was that intoxicating? Okay. I mean, I don't know many women who have, I'm sure they exist, because otherwise it wouldn't be in this book, that kind of relationship where there's someone with that much hold over them that they're literally dysfunctional. And it's kind of
weird, like almost like a consent kind of thing, because it's like, well, if he's legitimately intoxicating, then like some weird implications beside for that relationship.
Yeah.
That whole relationship structure was the thing that ended up giving us 50 Shades of Grey,
which was also
it was a
disaster.
It was a Twilight fanfic. That's what it was originally made as. Was it E.L. James? I think it's the author for
something like that
for the 50 Shades of Grey. She actually made a Twilight fanfic, and people liked it so much because people love Twilight. That
we're not those people, though. Yeah, just to make that clear, we're not those people.
They wanted her to turn into something original, and she realized, oh wow, I can make money off this, and she just like changed all the stuff around and made it into 50 Shades of Grey, because she really liked that relationship dynamic. It's very similar if you think about it. Like, she's like obsessed with him, and he's got this hold over her, has a lot of control and stuff like that.
BDSM.
Yeah, but a very poor showing of like BDSM.
And then she did it from his perspective. What's his face? The guy's perspective.
Wasn't it just called Grey?
I think, yeah.
The name of the book.
Okay. I did read a satirical form of this called The 50 Shames of Earl Grey. So I'm thinking Earl Grey, and no, that's not his name. But much better book, by the way. It was funny. Yeah, but he's creepy stalker dude. It's not good. Not good. What's with creepy stalker dudes in literature for women?
I mean,
don't get it.
Like, Twilight is kind of the bundle of like all of the tropes that I don't like in a lot of YA books. A lot of them end up having female protagonists that have a lot of these tropes, but where love triangles are terrible no matter what they are in, whether it's Hunger Games, whether it's actually Maze Runner had a kind of a love triangle, but that was a male protagonist, which was kind of like different.
Change of pace. Yeah.
It had like the Cassandra Clare books, Mortal Instruments had it. And that was a weird one because there was like incest kind of connotation behind it, but it wasn't real incest. Oh, I don't want to spoil that, but this is not in case you ever read it. There was weird connotations.
No, I heard incest. I'm good.
It's not. Well, I mean, it wasn't actual incest
Well, you know what?
because they weren't actually related, but there was implications for like the first 3 books that they were related, and they continued going with it. But yeah, there's a lot of those have that trope, and also the I am a social pariah, I have no friends, but yet everybody wants to be with me kind of thing, where she like acts like, oh, I'm so uncool, nobody likes me, I'm like on the fringes of all of the social groups, yet I have like attractive people that are like pining over me at all times. The like all that kind of those kind of tropes are kind of bundled into Twilight. It's like the embodiment of those tropes. It's not good. And it doesn't get any better as it goes on. I've actually read the whole series, and it doesn't get any better as the books go on. It gets worse. There's like weird things, like the imprinting on the infant thing is really strange. Like where Jacob imprint. I don't know if anybody's seen the movie, but like, hopefully you didn't struggle through the books. But the like Jacob imprints and like becomes like soulmates or something with Renesmee, who is Bella and Edward's daughter. And that's strange. Like he was like destined to be with her, so that's why he was in love with Bella, not because he actually loved Bella, but because he was like soul bound to her future unborn fetus. It was like really weird. That's from Breaking Dawn. Yeah, like the way that Stephenie Meyers describes things in all of the books is so poorly done. It's like she will spend pages describing something that's very simple. Like they in New Moon, when the Lamont, the guy with the dreads, the bad vampire.
I only
dreads,
got
whatever.
to the first book.
One of the 3 vampires that's in the bad group in the first book. They kill the main guy, and then you have the redheaded one, Victoria, I think her name was, and then you have, I want to say Lamont, but they come back in the second book, and Victoria's like this big looming threat throughout the whole book, like, oh, she's gonna come back, she wants revenge because you killed her lover, and then Lamont comes back, and he's kind of like pseudo good, pseudo bad, at one point or another, which Bella bumps into him randomly in the woods in the second book when Edward had like left and like she was trying to kill herself and crap. And she spends like 3 pages talking about like her feelings and the description of seeing this vampire. Like, oh, a wave of emotions rattled over me as I look at this figure standing in the distance. And she like goes through every friggin' emotion and describes him and describes the field and describes all the stuff. It's like enough's enough. You don't need it. Like he's there if we get it.
So overall, just poor writing. Just not good.
Yeah, it's just really, really poor. So do you want to rag on Twilight more, or do you want to move on?
I am good. I'm working off of like I was 15 when I read this, so bear with me.
I'm gonna go with for my next one is there'll be a specific book, but it's more a specific point in a series. If anybody's ever read the Anita Blake Vampire Hunter series, I feel like it's a shrinking segment of the population at this point, but they were popular at one point. I was reading that through high school, and it was one of the first books that book series that I really got into and really like the world and the lore behind it. It's very simplistic by my standards now that I've read a lot of books since then, a lot of fantasy books. But the foundation of it is there's the paranormal investigator, Anita Blake, and she's an animator, which is somebody who can raise zombies for like parties or like to tell like if somebody got murdered, they can raise the zombie to have them speak like who killed them. Like information gathering. It's a lot of different reasons why you would raise the zombies, but she could do that. So she worked for an animating company, and she also worked with the local. I want to say it was St. Louis. I believe it was St. Louis, but she worked with like the police department there to handle crime having to do with the supernatural. And in this, like the supernatural people are like they're out, like everybody knows about them. Like vampires run cities and things like that. Like they have separate like organizations, obviously, but like everybody's aware of the people that are in like the supernatural beings that are there. Nobody's hiding. And so she would handle those cases, and it turns out she encounters like a local group of vampires, and it turns out that she's a necromancer, which is different from an animator because it's born. It's not like a skill that you learn. You just like naturally raise the dead whenever she wants. Like she'd have a fit of anger. Like she raises like an entire cemetery in the second book. And they're really old zombies, and it was like, wow, it's really impressive. You must be a necromancer. We vampires don't like necromancers because they control the dead, and we're dead. So she's like all the vampires want to kill her, except for the ones that like want to bring them into her into their group. I liked the books up until the 8th book in the series, and there's I think 15 of them now.
That's
maybe?
too many books.
14, 15.
Too many books.
It is too many books, but I liked the series up until about the 8th or 9th book. My favorite book in the series was Obsidian Butterfly, which was the 8th book. It still had a lot of at that point it still had a lot of the crime stuff. Like there would be serial killers that would have some kind of tie to like either witches or some kind of cult or something that would make them supernatural. So she'd have to help with that, and so that was really cool. They built a very expansive lore based around the different groups of vampires and like the different were animal groups. Like they had a pack, and they had like the pard, which was the were leopards. They had the streak, which was the were tigers. There was a whole bunch of different things, and there was a lot of politics that kind of involved in it. And there was a lot of interesting characters. A lot of the antagonists were kind of cool, but it always had a romance edge to it. It was written by Laurell K. Hamilton, who always came off as kind of like an E.L. James type, where it was like she was kind of, this was fantasy like fulfillment, and her other series, the Meredith Gentry novels, were like leaned into that way from the beginning. Like they just were like, we're just no pretenses. But in the beginning, it seemed like she wanted to lean more into the procedural. She wanted the action, the world building, and all that. But as the book series went on, it was just straight romance books. After like the 8th or 9th book, all of the plots started revolving around like her reverse harem. Like she had like were-tigers, werewolves, were-leopards, vampires of all different bloodlines that wanted to like be with her, that were in her, like I said, reverse harem. And that was all of her problems started getting solved through her harem. If I was going to focus on one book that was the worst book in the series, it would be Skin Trade, which was the book that took all of the cool characters of the series so far to put them into one book and ruined them. All of them, like one right after another, just destroyed them. And the final resolution is the two main antagonists that they've been building up for the entire series. One for a little bit shorter than the other, but in terms of the power level of these people that they were building up, wiped out in one book. One of them off, like, not, I want to say off screen, but like it happened and then was talked about. Like you didn't actually get to witness them killing off the main antagonists of the entire series up to that point, which I don't understand what that creative decision was. And then after that book, I never even read any of the others. I think there's like 4 since then, and I'd given up completely.
Makes sense. I can understand.
So yeah,
sorry.
It's okay. It was ripped. It was ripped from me so long ago. I'm over it now.
He totally doesn't sound over it. Got anything else for me?
Any other books or anything?
Yes.
I mean, I was going to briefly mention The Magicians, which I thought was a very hyped book that I didn't like and never finished. It was supposed to be like Harry Potter, but for grown-ups. Like it was a college. It was a college instead of a like I guess a middle school and high school or whatever. Yeah. But so they were all adults, and there was like kind of drugs and drinking and like intimate relationships and things like that. Stuff. Yeah, stuff that you wouldn't tackle in Harry Potter. But it essentially centered around a guy who was supposed to go to Princeton, but he ended up flunking out of his Princeton interview. I think it was, or he didn't make it on time. It was a while ago that I read this book and I didn't like it. So then he ended up getting following this girl to Break Bill's Academy, which is their version of Hogwarts, essentially. And yeah, and he gets accepted into there to do magic. And his friend who also applied didn't get in, and they wiped her memory, but it didn't turns out that didn't stick. So she's like going crazy now and trying to find like black market witches that can teach her magic. It focuses on all of the boring stuff. Like if you took Harry Potter and you're like, let's take out all the cool stuff and focus on like them just going to class all the time. Like that's basically what this book was. It was so boring. All of the characters were boring. Apparently it gets good at some point. They have this whole like magical world that their parent, like his family's was involved in, like discovering, kind of like Narnia. It was very Harry Potter meets Narnia. But so this hidden world, and I got right up to the point where they finally got there and proved that it was real, and then I stopped reading. That's how
Sounds like you.
That's how boring I found it, that I didn't even want to see the magical world.
It's pretty bad.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. Yeah, so that's probably my last.
All right, now we will find out which book we like the least, or series. All right, so why don't we, since we have some paper, we'll write down a name of a book and then kind of like move the other books around it to find the worst one. All right, so since we started talking about Heretics Anonymous, we'll put that on the list first and then break everything around that one. All right. So the next thing you brought up was good old Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, which I did not read, but seems very sloppy, but otherwise not terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, it was sloppy, but it wasn't like my soul is dying sloppy.
It was sloppy. It didn't obey its own continuity. It broke its own canon. Like, had bad characterizations. Harry Potter at one point says that he wishes his son was not his son.
So that trope? Yeah.
Is that in character for Harry Potter?
I mean, a lot of stuff has happened since he went to Hogwarts.
It's true.
You don't know what the heck happened to Harry.
He's a pencil pusher at this point.
And he has a wife who's kind of corrupt. Little corrupt. Minor corruption. Right there.
Who, Ginny?
Oh, that's right. I always think he should have married Hermione. Like, honestly, why did he marry Ginny? What the heck happened?
He's married to Ginny, and all Ginny does in the entire thing is, like, when he wakes up from these nightmares that he's having, his scar is hurting again. When he wakes up from these nightmares, Ginny's like, hi, it's okay, go back to sleep. It's pretty much what she's there for.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, okay.
Ron runs his brother's joke shop now.
I can see that working. All right. So worse than talking to a leftover dream boner, or not worse than talking to a leftover dream boner?
I think worse to a Harry Potter fan, not as bad to an indifferent party.
That's fair. So is it worse or better than Heretics Anonymous?
I'll make it.
I'm leaning toward I'll make it better.
So because there's at least some stuff that was
that would go on this side. Okay. It was better because this is the worst book, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Cursed Child.
All right. Then we started talking about Twilight, which is, not an Us book series.
It's not good.
Twilight Saga. It's a Twilight Saga, but I only talk about Twilight because I can't be bothered to read that series. This is a hard one. I read it ages ago. Ooh. Like before it became a thing, that's when I read this book.
Twilight's pretty bad because I feel like it reverberated through a lot of other YA and gave us a lot of bad stuff. It gave us 50 Shades of Grey. That has to count against it.
Do you remember when all you would see in the bookstore when you went to Barnes & Noble was paranormal romance?
Yeah.
For like
that
4 years.
Came from Twilight.
Okay. So it's worse than Heretics. All right. What a surprise. Then we had the Anita Blake series.
I was personally offended by where the Anita Blake series went to because it meant a lot. At first. I did like it a lot. There was more than half of the series was salvageable. So I'd say
it's better
Yeah.
than what we've listed because you
It's
liked it
better,
at
yeah.
one point.
I liked it at one point.
So,
And I still remember a lot of it fondly.
okay. And then the last thing we have is The Magicians, which you did not like and I have not read.
I didn't even finish.
So that has to count against it. It was not even finishable. That's a problem.
And I didn't have that much left. And I just got to the good part and I still didn't finish it.
How many pages do you think?
I mean, I was listening to it on Audible.
Oh.
But I didn't
Misleading.
I didn't have very much left to it. I got through like 75% of the book before I stopped. I stopped right after the fox orgy.
Ooh, yeah, that's an issue too.
Yeah.
Fox orgy.
Yeah, they went on a training mission down to Antarctica at like some like random wizard that was down there, or witch. I don't remember what they called it.
Because all the witches go to Antarctica.
Yeah, there was like one guy who was down there, and he was supposed to teach them about solitude and like existing by themselves and being comfortable with themselves.
That's
and
what
they all
solitude
turned
means.
Yeah, they all turned into Arctic foxes, and they had a fox
They're
orgy.
So cute.
Yeah,
but
it was
then
weird.
not right. Yeah.
The two main characters fell in love with each other while they were foxes.
Okay, ew.
Yeah.
So is this worse than Twilight or better?
I feel like most people would not agree that it was worse than Twilight.
Okay, so
I'll put it like in between Heretics and Cursed Child.
Okay, all right. That's fair. Okay, so it's official, guys. We have your ranking. The worst book is Twilight and the Twilight Saga, followed by Heretics Anonymous, then The Magicians, then we have The Cursed Child, and then apparently Anita Blake isn't that bad, simply because the series was good at one point.
Yeah.
Then it's just not, which is fine. It happens. It's hard to keep a series good.
Just jump the shark. It's okay.
Anyway, thanks for helping me find the worst book ever, Jer.
You're welcome.
That was fun.
Now we got to talk about the best books.
We do. That's going to happen, guys. It's going to happen. Hang in there. We're going to get there. Thanks for coming, guys. See you next week. Bye. Happy 4th.